My name is Helen Mercer and I'm 35 years old. I was standing in the lobby of a Florida beach resort, suitcase in hand, while the desk clerk told me there was no reservation under my name, and my parents studied the ocean like they'd never seen one before. My sister didn't study anything. She smiled and said, "We reserved rooms for me, my husband, and my child. We're the real family." I looked at her. I looked at my family. Then I said, "Then I'll leave." And I did. I turned off my ringer and let their calls pile up. 6, then 20, then close to 50 by sunset. Nobody in that lobby, including me, saw what was coming. Before the week was over, the oldest man in our family would stand up at his own birthday dinner and say one quiet sentence that brought the whole glittering thing down. And even that was not the part that changed my life. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally get their say, and family secrets come home to roost. If you've ever been left off the list by the people who should have saved you a seat, this story is for you. Drop a comment below, and be sure to subscribe. Let me back up. I run clinical research for a biotech company in Boston. 31 people report to me. When a new drug gets tested on human beings, I'm the person who makes sure nobody cuts corners, and I am very good at my job. I paid my own way through school, scholarships, double shifts at a diner, a decade of instant noodles. I check every number twice. I read the fine print on everything, including birthday cards. My condo is 2 payments from being mine, and every stick of furniture in it has a receipt with my name on it. That's me. Now my family. They live in Columbus, Ohio, and they live beautifully. That's the only word I've ever found for it. Beautifully. My sister Chloe is 38, and her kitchen looks like a magazine spread. My parents belong to a country club with valet parking. Nobody in my family has what you or I would call a paycheck, and somehow nobody ever flinches at a bill, and every year I flew back anyway. Christmas, Easter. Every birthday with a 0 in it. My assistant used to ask why I kept going, and the honest answer lives in a hospital room 10 years back, with my grandmother Ruth holding my hand while the machines hummed, making me promise her something I've never repeated out loud. I'll get to that, I promise. For now, here's what you need to know about me. I kept coming back to a table that never quite had a chair for me, and I told myself that this was what family meant. I was the one who understood. Understanding was my job title in that house, and unlike my real job, it didn't pay, and the hours were terrible. The call came in April. My mother's voice had that bright, organized shine it gets when there's an event to produce. "Your grandfather's turning 85 in July. We're doing a whole week at the Sandpiper Grand in Clearwater Beach. The whole family. Chloe's handling all the bookings." I remember exactly where I was standing, my office window, watching a ferry cross the harbor, because of what I said next. "Let me book my own room, Mom. It's easier. I'll just match the dates." "Don't be silly," she said. "It's all handled. Chloe has the group rate." I'm a careful woman. Confirming things is literally my profession. So I texted Chloe that night. Was I on the reservation list? Did she need my card? She wrote back, "Yep. All set." With a little smiling sun. 2 weeks before the trip I asked again, because the 4th of July week on that coast sells out to the studs. Same answer. All set. So I moved a trial approval meeting I had guarded for 3 months. I bought the flights. I bought a sundress the color of key lime pie because it made me think of Grandpa Walter, who ate a slice every Sunday of my childhood and let me steal the whipped cream. I want to be fair here, because fairness matters to me. I did everything a reasonable person does. I offered to book. I confirmed twice. I have the texts. If you're listening to this and thinking you would have seen it coming, maybe. But the trap wasn't built out of my carelessness. It was built out of someone else's planning, and it had been under construction, quietly, since March. Here's something I need you to understand about my family, because it took me 30 years to say it plainly. Nobody in that house ever discussed money, not once. Money was like weather from another state. Somebody else's forecast, nothing to do with us. And yet it rained comfort every single day. Chloe stays home in a 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood where the lawns look vacuumed. Her husband Grant, 40 years old, calls himself a consultant. In 11 years I never met a client, never heard a company name, never saw the man open a laptop. He has opinions about wine and a boat he calls a project. My father's business card says investor. My mother redoes a room every spring the way other women buy sandals. Club memberships, Scottsdale in February, a new SUV in Chloe's driveway every second autumn, regular as leaves. Once, years ago, I sat in my car after Thanksgiving and did the math on the back of a pharmacy receipt. 2 households. No visible income. I added up what that life costs, looked at the number, and stopped. It wasn't my business, I decided. Families have arrangements. Maybe Dad's investments were brilliant. Maybe Grant consulted for ghosts who paid in cash. I crumpled the receipt and drove back to my hotel, and I remember feeling relieved to drop it, the way you feel when you close a file that isn't yours. Keep that receipt in mind. Keep the question in mind, the one I trained myself not to ask. Who pays for all of this? Because the answer was sitting in a small house in Bel Air, Florida, 20 minutes from that big pink resort, drinking black coffee and missing his wife. And in July, the answer turned 85. I flew down on the Tuesday before the 4th. Boston to Tampa, 3 hours of a toddler kicking my seat. And I didn't care, because I was going to see my grandfather. The Sandpiper Grand rises off Clearwater Beach like a wedding cake somebody ordered in 1988. Pink stucco, palm trees in rows, a fountain in the lobby you can hear from the valet stand. I rolled my suitcase through those doors at 2 in the afternoon, sundress on, actually humming. I spotted my family before they spotted me. They were arranged around the pool bar in new hats and old confidence, tanned. It was day 1 of the trip. Except it wasn't. I'd learn. They had all flown down Monday, a full day earlier, and nobody had thought to mention the schedule change to me. My nephew radar went off first, except it's a niece, Lily, 6 years old, the only Ashford who runs toward me instead of glancing up. She hit my knees like a linebacker. "Aunt Helen, we saw a dolphin and Daddy said a word." For 1 second, holding that sweaty little girl in the Florida light, I thought, this is why you come. Then I walked to the front desk to check in before joining them, because I wanted to hang up the dress and put on sunscreen like a responsible adult. The clerk was young and kind. She typed. She frowned. She typed again. Slower, the way people type when they're hoping the computer will change its mind. Then she looked up at me with the first honest face I'd seen since the airport and said, "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I don't see a reservation under that name." I did what careful people do. I spelled it. Mercer, Helen. I gave her my ID. I suggested she check under my father's name, Frank Mercer, then under Ashford, the group block. She found the block right away. 4 rooms. My parents, Chloe and Grant. A room for Lily with a connecting door. A 4th room listed under the group for late checkout. Being used, I'd find out, to store beach gear and a stroller. There was no 5th room. There had never been a 5th room. Could I just book something? I asked, already reaching for my wallet, still assuming this was a clerical thing, a dropped keystroke, fixable with a credit card like most of life's problems. She winced. "We're fully committed through the holiday, ma'am. I'm so sorry. There's a wait list." Behind me, I heard my family arriving in the lobby, Lily's flip-flops slapping the marble. I turned around with my ID still in my hand. And here is the detail I will carry to my grave. Nobody asked what was wrong. Think about that. You see your daughter, your sister, standing at a front desk with her suitcase while a clerk apologizes to her, and you don't ask what's wrong? You don't ask because you already know. Surprise has a sound. I've heard it in conference rooms when data goes sideways. That lobby had none of it. My father found something fascinating on his phone. My mother adjusted Lily's hat with tremendous focus. Grant studied the ice in his drink like it owed him money. The only person who looked directly at me was Chloe. And Chloe was smiling, the way you smile when a plan comes together. She crossed the lobby unhurried, sunglasses pushed up in her blow-dried hair, holding a drink with a paper umbrella in it. My big sister. 38 years old, and she had been waiting for this moment the way I wait for trial results. "Oh no," she said, in a voice made entirely of frosting. "Was there a mix-up?" "There's no room for me, Chloe." She sipped. And then she said it, each word placed like a fork at a table set for company. "Well, we reserved rooms for me, my husband, and my child. We're the real family. The fountain kept trickling. Somewhere a bellhop wheeled a cart of someone else's luggage, someone whose family had counted them. I looked at my mother. "Chloe, honey," Mom said, and I watched the sentence die right there in her mouth. That was the whole rescue. Half a name, and a trailing off. My father never looked up from his phone, and his silence was the loudest thing in that lobby. I've spent my career watching how people behave when a result is bad. There's a moment where everyone decides what they are. This was that moment, and everyone in my family chose. So I chose too. I set my shoulders, picked up the handle of my suitcase, and looked at my sister without raising my voice even half a note. "Then I'll leave." That's all I said. Chloe blinked. She'd rehearsed for tears, or begging, or a scene she could tell later at brunch, and I'd handed her nothing to perform against. I walked past the fountain, through the revolving door and out into the flat white heat of Florida, and behind me, I heard Lily's small voice ask, "Where is Aunt Helen going?" Nobody teaches you where to drive after your family tells you what you are. I pointed the rental south down Gulf Boulevard with the windows open because I wanted noise that wasn't my own head. The phone started before I cleared the resort's palm trees. Mom, Chloe, Dad. Dad. Who hasn't dialed me unprompted since the Obama administration. Mom again. By the first red light there were 6 missed calls. By the bridge at Indian Rocks Beach, 17. I let them wring themselves out in the cup holder like angry bees in a jar. Around 5 o'clock I passed a motel from another century. White cinder block, turquoise doors, a hand-painted sign with a seagull on it. The Gull Cottage. A vacancy light, half burned out, buzzing vac. The owner was a woman in her 70s with reading glasses on a chain and a crossword half done. Yes, she had a room. $42 a night made her apologetic. The holiday, she explained. She took my card. Mine, with my name embossed on it, and slid a brass key across the counter. A real key, heavy, stamped with a 7. It felt like the first honest transaction of the day. Room 7 had a bed that sagged in the middle, an air conditioner with a smoker's cough, and a balcony the size of an ironing board with a full, unbroken view of the Gulf of Mexico. I sat on that balcony and watched the water turn gold while my phone climbed to 23 missed calls. Then I finally played my mother's first voicemail, and a cold little wire threaded through my chest. There was no apology in it. Not one. Just her party voice, pulled tight. "Helen, call us back before dinner, it's important." Before dinner? Why before dinner? I sat with a gas station iced tea and listened to all of them, one after another, like depositions. Voicemail 3. "Helen, this is very embarrassing for everyone." Embarrassing for everyone. Voicemail 5. My mother. Brighter, scarier. "Sweetheart, we can fix this, there's a rollaway. Chloe says Lily's room has a daybed." A daybed? In the child's room. Voicemail 8 was my father. 6 seconds of throat clearing and then, "Call your mother." Chloe didn't call. Chloe texted because texts don't require a tone of voice. "Stop being dramatic. Come back before you ruin this." I read that one twice. Ruin this? Not. I'm sorry. Not. I don't know what happened with the booking. Ruin this. As if there were a this. Some delicate structure I was endangering by not sleeping on a daybed like a visiting cousin. By sunset the counter on my phone said 47 missed calls, and I want you to sit with that number the way I did, because it's a strange one. People do not call you 47 times in an afternoon to say they're sorry. Sorry has no deadline. Sorry can wait until morning. Sorry usually does. People call you 47 times when something they need is on fire, and the fire has a schedule. Every single voicemail circled the same drain. "Come back tonight. Be at dinner. Wear something nice. We'll sort the room thing later. Just be there." Not one of them said the word sorry, and not one of them explained why tonight mattered so much. On my little ironing board balcony, the sky went from gold to bruise purple, and I turned the question over like a lab result that wouldn't parse. Something was landing tonight. Something they needed me propped in a chair for. I had no idea what. I found out at 8 o'clock. While the phone buzzed itself hoarse, I did something I hadn't let myself do in years. I went back through the catalog. Christmas, 6 years ago. I was 29, delayed out of Logan by a snowstorm, and I texted updates the whole way like a good employee. When I walked into my parents' living room, the family photo had already been taken. Matching plaid pajamas, professional photographer, everyone arranged by the fire. Nobody had mentioned a photographer. "We'll Photoshop you in," Grant said, not even looking up from his phone. They never did. That photo hung over my parents' fireplace for years. 11 smiling relatives and no me, and every Christmas I hung my coat under it and said nothing. Or my cousin's wedding, 4 years back. I flew in from a conference in Denver, red-eyed, gift in hand. I was seated at table 9, by the kitchen doors, with a hospice chaplain and the DJ's wife. Chloe, Grant, and my parents were at table 1, under the chandelier. "The Ashfords are a family unit," my mother explained afterward gently, like she was teaching me a rule of grammar. And here's the thing I finally saw, on that motel balcony, 35 years old, watching pelicans fly home in formation. Every one of those times I had translated for them. Snowstorm, seating chart software, hotel error. I was fluent in it, turning cruelty into logistics, spin into weather. It was the family job nobody thanked me for. The interpreter. And the difference that night wasn't that they'd finally gone too far. The lobby was just the old sentence, spoken clearly for once. The difference was me. Somewhere between the fountain and room 7, the interpreter had quietly retired, and no one, least of all me, knew who I'd be without her. At 8 o'clock exactly, the phone lit again, and this time the screen said, "Grandpa Walter," and I answered before the second ring, the way I have answered that man my whole life. "Helen." My grandfather has a voice like a hand on your shoulder, slow, level, sanded smooth by 84 years of Ohio winters and lumber dust. "Hi, Grandpa. Happy birthday week." A pause, long even for him. Then, "I did a foolish thing this evening. Wanted to surprise everybody. I called the front desk and asked them to send a key lime pie up to every Mercer room in the hotel. One for your folks. One for your sister and Grant. Even a little one for Lily's room." I closed my eyes. I saw it before he said it. "The girl at the desk was very helpful," he went on, level as a spirit level. "Read me the list. 4 rooms. I had her read it twice, Helen, because I figured I was going deaf. The gulf kept folding and unfolding against the sand below my balcony. "There's no room under your name, Helen, my granddaughter, the one flying the farthest. Tell me why." And there it was. The whole family in one hand, the truth in the other, and 85 years of that man's heart in between. Because make no mistake, this is what every one of those 47 calls had been about. Not me. Him. He was coming to the resort for his own birthday week, and the picture had a hole in it, and their one prayer was to patch the hole before the man looking at the picture noticed. He'd noticed. He'd noticed by pie. "Grandpa," I said, and stopped, because I understood that whatever I said next couldn't be unsaid. Let me pause right there, with the phone warm against my ear and the truth sitting in my mouth. If you've ever held that phone, deciding whether to protect the people who didn't protect you, tell me in the comments what you chose. I read every single one, and if this story feels a little too familiar, hit subscribe now, because what my grandfather did next, nobody in my family saw coming. I decided on the balcony of a $42 motel room that I was done interpreting, but that I would not become a prosecutor either. He'd asked why. He deserved the answer, unpolished, and no more. "There was no room for me," I said. "Chloe made the bookings back in the spring. When I asked at the desk, she told me the rooms were for her, Grant, and Lily. She said they're the real family. So I left. I'm at a little motel down the beach. I'm fine, Graham. I promise I'm fine. No editorializing, no 20-year history. Facts, the way I deliver them to a review board." The silence on the line went on so long I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. When he finally spoke, his voice hadn't gotten louder. It had gotten quieter, which, with my grandfather, is the direction that matters. "She said that. The real family." "Yes, sir." Another silence. Then he said something that rearranged the furniture in my head. "Helen, who do you think is paying for that hotel?" I said nothing, because the napkin math from all those Thanksgivings was suddenly doing itself, line by line, at terrible speed. "The rooms," he said. "The flights. The cabana your brother-in-law is drinking under right now. The dinner Friday night. It's my birthday, sweetheart. I bought my own party. I bought the whole week." He let that sit exactly one breath. "The real family," he repeated. Flat. Like a man reading a defect off an invoice. Then, "Text me the name of your motel. Don't tell anybody I called." The line went quiet, and I sat there in the dark with the pelicans gone and the tide coming in, holding the first piece of the answer I'd spent my whole life not asking for. At 9 o'clock, headlights swung across the Gull Cottage parking lot, and a 2009 Buick the color of wet sand rolled to a stop under the Seagull sign. My grandfather got out slowly, the way he does everything now, pressed shirt buttoned to the collar in 90-degree heat, and stood a moment looking at the place. The cinder block, the buzzing vac sign, the turquoise doors. I came down the outside stairs and he watched me the whole way, and he did not hug me. That's not our language. He looked at me the way he used to look at a load-bearing wall, checking for cracks, and then he nodded at the plastic chairs on the walkway outside my door. We sat. For a while he said nothing, and the Gulf did the talking. Then, "Don't polish it for me, I've had a bellyful of polish. Tell me straight." So I told him straight. The April phone call. All set. With the smiling sun. The meeting I moved. The desk clerk typing slower and slower. 4 rooms and a stroller closet. The frosting voice. The real family. My own short goodbye and the revolving door. I kept my voice level the whole way through, and he listened the way he reads contracts. No nodding. No wincing. All of it going somewhere permanent behind his eyes. When I finished, his jaw worked once. Twice. Like he was chewing something with a bone in it. The AC unit in room 6 rattled on. Somewhere down the beach, early fireworks crackled and quit. And then my grandfather asked me one question, and it wasn't about the room. "How long?" he said, still looking at the water. "Has it been like this?" And God help me. I didn't say a word. And that was the loudest answer I've ever given anyone. He sat with my silence for a long time, 84 years old, hands folded, watching the last light come off the water, and I would have paid any amount of money to not know what he was feeling, because whatever it was, I'd caused it by telling the truth, and the interpreter in me kept twitching toward her old desk. He stood at last, joints announcing themselves, and asked to see the room. Humor, an old builder. So I showed him room 7. He took it in the way he takes in everything. The sagging bed, the cough drop air conditioner, the water stain on the ceiling shaped like Ohio, the brass key lying on the dresser with its big honest 7. He picked up the key and weighed it in his palm. "You paid for this?" "I always pay for my own room, Grandpa." It came out of me without thinking, and I heard it land. Heard how much bigger it was than the motel. He nodded. Slow, still holding the key. 40 years I built houses for people, he said. You know what I learned? Everybody loves a house. Almost nobody wants to pay for one. He set the key down gently, square on the dresser, like he was setting a cornerstone. That right there is the most expensive thing anyone in this family owns, and you're the only one who ever bought one. He walked to the door, and at the threshold he turned. Lunch tomorrow. Noon, at the resort. Not for them. For me. Wear the dress you bought. He was in the Buick before I could answer. I stood in room 7 with my heart going like a trial with early results, looking at a $2 brass key that had somehow just become the most important object in my life. I walked back into the Sandpiper Grand at noon the next day on my grandfather's arm, in the key lime dress, and I got to watch something I will never forget. My family's faces doing math. Half a second. I clocked it like a stopwatch. Half a second of pure system failure. My mother's mouth opening with nothing loaded in it. Chloe's drink pausing midair. Grant recalculating his entire posture. And then the performance came on like stadium lights. There she is! My mother cried, arms wide, party voice at full sail. We were worried sick. You just disappeared. I received a hug that was mostly fingernails and perfume. Grant pumped my hand like a donor. Chloe air-kissed somewhere east of my cheek and said, cute dress. Through teeth whitened past the point of argument. Within 90 seconds there was a chair for me. A chair conjured from thin air, a place setting, a menu, sparkling water, still water. Would I like the grouper? The grouper is wonderful. Nobody mentioned the room, nobody mentioned the lobby, or the calls, or the word that had been hanging over my name since yesterday afternoon. The table talk was sunscreen and dolphins. Lily showed me a shell, and I sat there in the middle of the warmth like a scientist who has finally isolated the variable. So this is what it looks like when they need me visible. I didn't perform back, and I didn't sulk. I answered pleasantly and watched, the way I watch data, and one seat over, my grandfather was doing the exact same thing over his iced tea, quiet as an audit. 2 auditors at one table. Only one of them knew the other was already deep into the books, and neither of them was me. If you've never watched a quiet man take a family apart with polite questions, I hope you never earn the occasion. It started over key lime pie, mid-dessert, casual as sunscreen. Shame about the rooms, Grandpa said to no one in particular. Big group like this. Chloe, you booked back in March, didn't you? A beat. The hotel must have dropped Helen's, Chloe said, smooth as her frosting voice, sunglasses on her hair even indoors. It's been a nightmare, honestly. Holiday week. Said my grandfather, and let the lie stand there in the sun where everyone could see it. Then, mild as milk. Grant. How's the consulting? Still busy? Grant lit up the way he does when the subject is Grant. Great quarter. Big things moving. A client in. Small pause. Logistics. Which firm is that? Grandpa asked, friendly, and I watched a 40-year-old man discover he had not prepared a name. The sentence died somewhere over the dessert cart. Confidentiality, Grant finally said, tapping his nose, and my grandfather said, again, and I realized I was watching a man check load-bearing walls, one knock at a time, listening for hollow. Dad got a knock too. Club's treating you well, Frank? Dues went up again, I hear. And my father, who has never once discussed a bill in my presence, said dues were dues, and laughed a laugh with nothing inside it. Chloe's hand had gone to her wedding ring, twisting it, around, and for a strange half-second I felt something for her that was almost pity. Then lunch ended and my grandfather folded his napkin, thanked everyone, and smiled. Friday night, my birthday dinner, all of us. That was all. So why did it land on the table like a subpoena? Thursday afternoon, my mother came to the Gull cottage. She stood in the doorway of room 7 holding her purse in both hands like a shield, taking in the cinder block and the sagging bed, with an expression she'd have denied under oath. She had not come to apologize. I understood that within one sentence, because the sentence was, "You've made your point, Helen." I let that one go by. She sat on the edge of the bed the way you'd sit on a wet bench, and got to it. Friday is your grandfather's night. Please don't make waves at dinner. You know how he is. He gets ideas about people. I asked her calmly what really happened with the booking, and I watched my mother pick truth over comfort for the first time all week, though only because she thought the truth would recruit me. Chloe made the reservations in March. She said you'd probably be working anyway. You're always working, sweetheart. And your father and I thought. She trailed, then found it. We thought it wasn't worth upsetting her over a maybe. There it was, complete at last. Not an oversight, a decision in March, a lie in April, a lie in June, and my parents' signatures in the margin, in invisible ink, the kind they've always used. Keeping Chloe happy keeps the peace. That was the house I grew up in, spoken out loud at last in a motel that smelled like salt and Lysol. I already left quietly once this week, Mom, I said. I'm coming to dinner. She looked at me a long moment, and something crossed her face that might have been fear, and might have been respect, and left before I could name it. At the door she paused. Wear something nice, my mother said. Some songs only know one verse. Thursday evening my grandfather picked me up in the Buick, and we walked the hard sand at the tide line, shoes in our hands like it was 40 years ago, and he was teaching me to find sand dollars. He talked about Ruth. How she kept score at gin rummy in a spiral notebook and cheated only on his birthday, so he'd win. How the whole last month in the hospital she worried about everyone else's parking validation. Then he stopped walking and faced the water, and I watched him decide to say the thing he'd driven over to say. After your grandmother died, I did my grieving with a checkbook. Your dad was lost, and Chloe cried at me. And it was easier to wire money than to look at either one of them. Every year it got easier. You know what I told myself? I'm helping. The waves kept arriving, patient, like they had all the time he didn't. I didn't build a family, Helen, I bought one. I've heard my grandfather angry maybe twice in my life. This was worse. This was a man reading his own inspection report. I told him then about the hospital room, 10 years ago. The promise I'd never said out loud to anyone. Grandma Ruth's hand in mine, papery and certain. Promise me you'll keep showing up for this family. So I had. Christmas after Christmas, table 9 after table 9. He listened, and then he shook his head slowly. Ruthie said the family, he said. She never said the show. I stood there with my shoes in my hand while that sentence rearranged 10 years of my life. Then he squeezed my shoulder once, walked toward the Buick and said over his shoulder, "Tomorrow night I'm giving my birthday speech. I've been writing it for 30 years. The private dining room at the Sandpiper Grand had white tablecloths, Gulf view windows going pink with sunset, and a slideshow my mother had produced, looping on a screen by the cake table. I stood with a glass of sparkling water and watched 60-odd photographs of my family go by. I appeared in 2 of them. 2. One was my own college graduation. Even then, I was at the edge of the frame, half-cropped, like weather that had wandered into the shot. Nobody else seemed to notice, which was, of course, the point of my entire life in that family. Dinner was grouper and compliments. Grant toasted the best grandpa in the world, with a catch in his voice that came and went like a light switch. And then, between dinner and cake, my grandfather stood up, and he did not raise his glass. "Sit down, Grant," he said, mild. Grant sat. "I'm 85 today. I've been rich for about 40 of those years, and I've been a fool for about 10 of them, and tonight those 2 facts are done living in the same house." Total silence. Even the slideshow seemed to hush, and then my grandfather began to read from memory, in the flat, unhurried voice of a man reading an invoice. "Frank, Carol, I paid off your mortgage the year Lily was born. I pay the club, $11,000 a year. I pay for Scottsdale, $9,000, the first of every month, wired like clockwork." My father went the color of the tablecloth. "Chloe, Grant, the down payment on the Colonial was mine, $7,500 a month. That's the consulting, son. There's no logistics client. There never was. And this week, these rooms, those flights, that grouper, this cake, mine." He looked around the table, slow, like a man walking a job site. Then he turned to Chloe, and his voice didn't rise at all, which is what made it terrible. "You told my granddaughter she wasn't the real family. You were more right than you knew, sweetheart. None of this was real. I paid for all of it." Nobody moved. Somewhere behind me the sunset kept going, pink and gold and indifferent, and my grandfather stood at the head of that table with 50 years of unspoken arithmetic finally out of his mouth, and he wasn't finished. He picked up his water glass, looked at it, set it back down. And then he said the sentence. "As of the 1st of next month, it stops. All of it. The transfers, the dues, the cards, the arrangements, every penny." It didn't sound like a sentence at all. It sounded like a foundation cracking. "I'm 85 years old," he went on into the silence. "And this week, at that front desk, I finally got a good look at what my money built. A hotel with no room in it for the only one of you who ever tried to pay her own way." My mother made a sound like a hiccup. Grant said, "Walter." And my grandfather looked at him. Just looked. And Grant's voice went back wherever it lives. It was Chloe who broke. Chloe, whose whole architecture had just been read aloud like a bill of lading. The tears came fast and real. I'd never seen real ones on her. They're different. Uglier. And then, through them, she found the oldest exit in the building. She turned on me. "You did this," she said, shaking, mascara going. "You've been planning this. You and your little motel and your little wounded face. You did this." And my grandfather said, "Helen." The whole room turned. He was looking at me, steady, both hands flat on the tablecloth. "Did I get it wrong?" he asked me in front of all of them. "You know these people, you've been covering for them your whole life. Tell me if I got it wrong." And there it was. The job opening. Interpreter. one vacancy, immediate start. 35 years of it's fine, it was a misunderstanding, they didn't mean it, rose up in my throat on pure muscle memory. I looked at my mother's pleading face, and I said, "No, Grandpa, you didn't." I want to be honest with you about what that room felt like afterward, because if you came for fireworks, I don't have any. It felt like the moment after a car wreck, that ringing quiet where everyone is checking whether their hands still work. My father stood up too fast, and his voice went from anger to fear inside a single sentence. "Dad, be reasonable, we have obligations." And you could hear the exact syllable where he stopped defending his pride and started counting his bills. Grant kept saying, "Okay, okay, okay," to nobody. Palms up, a man patting an invisible dog. My mother wept without sound, which is how she does everything difficult. And Lily was standing by the cake table holding a shell she'd brought to show everyone, watching her mother cry. And that was the only part of the whole evening that actually hurt. A waitress, bless her, knelt down and led her out toward the lobby aquarium. I didn't gloat. I want that on the record. There was no vindication in my chest, no scoreboard lighting up. There was a kind of low, sad hum, like standing in a house you grew up in the day the movers empty it. My grandfather picked up his cake knife, looked at the untouched birthday cake, and put the knife back down. "Happy birthday to me," he said quietly, to no one. Then he offered me his arm and we walked out past the slideshow, which was still looping, still radiant, still missing me. In the Buick, in the dark, he stared through the windshield a while. "Next month I'm redoing things," he said finally. "Papers, lawyers? I'll want you at a table one more time, Helen." I said okay, because you say okay to that man. I had no idea what I was agreeing to. I flew home to Boston that Sunday, and the siege began Monday morning. Understand, for 20 years my phone barely rang with family. Now it wouldn't stop. My father called 3 times the first week. My father, who I'd assumed had lost my number, and every call had the same shape. 5 minutes of weather, then the pivot, gentle as a crowbar. "Have you spoken to your grandfather? He listens to you." My Aunt Peg, recruited off the bench, left rambling voicemails about how family is family is family, a sentence that gets less true every time it's repeated. My mother switched to care packages of guilt, photos of Lily at swim class with captions like, "She misses her aunt." Not one message in 3 weeks of this asked how I was. Not one asked what it had been like at that front desk or in room 7, or in that dining room with everyone's eyes on me. Every arrow, however it was feathered, flew the same direction. Talk to Walter. Soften Walter. Fix it, Helen. It was the interpreter job again. Same desk, better title, and this time the client list was desperate. Meanwhile, the collapse went on schedule, in little bulletins I didn't ask for. The club card, declined at lunch in front of Dad's golf group. Peg told me that one is a tragedy. I heard it as physics. The Colonial quietly listed with a realtor who specialized in transitions. A leased SUV, returned. And late one night, alone in my paid-for kitchen, I finally cried. Not for the money, and not for them, exactly. I cried for the family I'd spent 35 years believing was one more good deed away. That family, it turned out, had never existed. I was grieving someone who'd never been born. Quick question, from my kitchen table in Boston to yours. If the people who left you off the list suddenly needed you back on it, would you pick up the phone? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Because what my grandfather asked me to do next was heavier than anything my sister ever said in that lobby. Stay with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now would be the time. 3 weeks and 2 days after the birthday dinner, my sister appeared in the lobby of my office building in Boston. I almost walked past her. Chloe without the finish on her is a different person. Hair in a plain elastic, a wrinkled rain jacket, eyes with actual weather in them. She'd flown up on a basic economy fare to see me. That alone told me the world had ended. We sat on a bench by the elevators, and for the first time in perhaps 20 years, my sister said true things to me. The house was on the market. Grant was updating his resume, a phrase she said like a foreign vocabulary word she'd just learned. Lily's school had a payment plan now, and then she looked at her hands and said the truest thing I've ever heard from her. I haven't paid for a single thing since I was 22, Helen. Not a phone bill. I don't. Her voice cracked into something real. I don't know how to do what you do. And for 1 second I saw her at 16, braiding my hair before school because Mom was busy with the caterers, and something in my chest went soft toward my sister for the first time since that lobby. 1 second. Then she reached over, took my hand like a business partner and pitched me. Talk to Grandpa. Get him to turn it back on. He'll do it for you. And I swear, Helen, things change. You'll be included. Holidays, the pictures, all of it. You'll be family. I'll make sure. I sat with that offer in the elevator light. Then I said quietly, Chloe, you just offered to sell me the one thing that was supposed to be free. She left without looking back. My phone buzzed before she'd cleared the revolving door. Grandpa Walter. Come down Saturday, my grandfather said. No preamble. He was born before preamble. Bring nothing. My lawyer's drawn up papers, and I want you across the table from me when I sign them. I asked what kind of papers. The permanent kind, he said, and hung up, because he was also born before goodbyes. So Saturday morning I flew Boston to Tampa for the second time that summer, and I did what I do on planes, which is inventory. Somewhere over the Carolinas I laid my life out like a dataset. One condo, nearly paid for. One career, built brick by brick with nobody's ladder. One family, currently in controlled demolition. One grandfather, 85, in possession of a fortune, a guilty conscience, and my motel address. I knew an offer was coming. You don't summon a person you saw 3 weeks ago across 4 states to watch you sign paper unless the paper concerns them. I run approvals for a living. I know what a signature ceremony smells like. What I could not model, no matter how I ran it, was the shape of the offer. And that uncertainty did something to me I didn't enjoy admitting. It hoped. Some ancient, unkillable version of me, the girl under the fireplace photo she wasn't in, sat there at 30,000 feet hoping to finally be chosen, and the grown woman in the seat watched her hope and worried about her. Because I had learned some things that summer about what being chosen costs in my family, and who ends up holding the invoice. The plane came down over the Gulf, green gold and patient. My grandfather was at the curb in the Buick, engine running, window down. Good flight? Fine. Good, he said. Let's go rewrite the future. He wasn't smiling when he said it. My grandfather's house in Bel Air is 900 square feet of 1962, and he could buy the whole street with a phone call. We sat at the kitchen table, original Formica, gold-flecked, the table where Ruth taught me gin rummy, and his lawyer, a courteous silver-haired man named Dale, laid out folders like place settings. Coffee in Ruth's cups, the ones with the cornflowers. Outside, a sprinkler ticked in circles. And then, in the same voice he'd used to order the grouper, my grandfather offered me the keys to the kingdom. Everything, the proceeds from 40 years of Mercer Building Supply, the accounts, the properties, all of it, into a trust. Me, trustee. Me, principal heir. Effective while he lived, ironclad when he didn't. Your father, your mother, your sister, Grant. If they need something, they come to you. You decide what's real. You decide what gets funded, what gets rented, what gets earned. Dale slid the folder across the Formica and turned it to face me, and the tab on it said my name, Helen R. Mercer, in the typeface of things that cannot be taken back. You're the only one in this family who knows what a dollar weighs, my grandfather said. The only one who ever bought her own room, so I'm giving you the whole hotel. And I want you to understand what that folder was. It was the lobby, reversed. It was every table 9, refunded with interest. It was my sister, standing at a front desk for the rest of her life while I decided whether there was a room for her. The girl under the fireplace photo stood up inside me and reached for the pen with both hands. Chosen. In writing. Notarized. My grandfather watched me with those load-bearing eyes, and Dale uncapped the pen and set it on the folder, and the sprinkler ticked, and nobody said anything, because both men believed, reasonably, that there was nothing to decide. I'm going to tell you the truth about the next 5 minutes because I promised you honesty, and because I'm not proud of all of it. I wanted it. Oh, I wanted it. Not even the money. Although, let's not be saints. the money too. But the meaning of it. Safety so deep you never check a price tag again. And underneath the safety, something older and hungrier. The scoreboard. Settled forever. Chloe would have to call me. Chloe would have to be nice to me. Carefully, professionally nice. Every Christmas for the rest of her life. My mother would ask me, whether there was room in the budget. And I would get to be gracious about it. I sat at that gold-flecked table and ran the whole beautiful simulation, and it tasted like key lime. And then, because analyzing things is the only prayer I know, I kept running it. Year 2, Year 5, my phone ringing on the 1st of every month. Grant's new venture, needing just a bridge, just this once. My mother's voice. You know how your sister is. Every holiday, a budget meeting, every gift, a line item. Every I love you arriving with an invoice number, the way they always had in our family. Except now I'd be the one stamping them. I looked at the folder with my name on the tab and I finally saw its true shape. It wasn't a throne, it was a booth. A teller's window with a nicer chair. And behind the glass, for the rest of my life, me. The new Walter. The next envelope. My grandfather had spent 30 years buying his family, and it had cost him his family. And here he was. With all the love in the world, I truly believe that. Offering me the same store. My hand was on the pen. That's how close it came. My hand was actually on the pen. And then I heard it. Ruthie said the family, she never said the show. And I set the pen back down on the formica. No, Grandpa. The sprinkler ticked twice before anybody breathed. Dale looked at my grandfather. My grandfather never took his eyes off me. No? No to this, I said, and my voice stayed level, which surprised even me, given what it was carrying. You're not wrong that somebody should hold this family accountable. You're wrong about what it would cost me to be the one holding the ledger. If I sign that, I'm not your granddaughter anymore. I'm the bank. They'll smile at me the way they smiled at you. Did you like it? 40 years of it? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. So, here's what I want instead, I said, and I asked Dale for his legal pad, and at Ruth's kitchen table, at 35 years old, I drew up my inheritance and gave it away. 1. Take my name off everything. The will, the trust, all of it. Not a dollar comes to me. Not now. Not later. It has to be real, Grandpa, and it's only real if I can't ever profit from having said this. Dale started writing. 2. An education trust for Lily. College, trade school, whatever she chooses. With the bank as trustee. Not me, not my parents. Nobody with our last name touches it, so nobody can ever make her audition for it. My voice caught on that one, just slightly, and I let it. 3. A fixed annuity for my parents. Modest, irrevocable. Enough to be old on, not enough to perform on. They're your son and his wife. Nobody's sleeping in a car, but the show is over. And 4. I looked at him. The rest is yours, and you're going to spend some of it on yourself for once, and what you don't spend goes to a scholarship with Grandma's name on it, for kids who are paying their own tuition, kids who buy their own rooms. The kitchen was very quiet. You're turning down millions, Dale said, not unkindly. A man confirming the dosage. I know exactly what I'm turning down, I said, and to this day it is the truest sentence I have ever spoken, because I could feel it going. The safety, the scoreboard. The notarized version of Chosen, the last, oldest daydream of the girl outside the photo. All of it, sliding off the table like the tide going out. I've spent my whole life leaving quietly, I said. This time I'm staying. But not for the money, for the first conversation this family ever had that nobody paid for. My grandfather looked at me for a long time. Then Walter Mercer, 85 years old, put his hand over his mouth, and his shoulders shook once, twice, and I pretended to study the cornflowers on Ruth's cup, because some things you don't audit. You said you bought a family, I said, when he could hear me again. So stop buying, Grandpa, and let's see who stays. He signed it my way. Every page. And the last thing he did was slide Ruth's cup across the formica to my side of the table. Inheritance, he said. It's on my kitchen shelf in Boston right now. It's worth about $4. It's the most expensive thing I own. Except for one brass key. That night I didn't stay at his place, and I certainly didn't try the Sandpiper Grand. I drove the rental down Gulf Boulevard to the Gull Cottage, and the owner looked up from her crossword and smiled like I was a regular, and room 7 was free, and I paid for it with my own card, and the brass key was heavy in my hand, and all of it felt like liturgy. I sat on the ironing board balcony with my feet on the rail while the Gulf went dark, and I finally understood the thing I'd been circling since the lobby. I was never left out of that family for lack of trying. No amount of showing up was ever going to buy me in, because I wasn't being priced. I was being quarantined. I was the control group. The living proof that a person could stand up without being held up, and every room I paid for embarrassed every room they didn't. You can't have proof like that at table 1. It ruins the show. 20 years I'd been applying for a position that was never open, and that night, on a $42 balcony, I finally withdrew my application. My phone buzzed one last time. Chloe, I hope you're happy. I looked at it for a while. Then I put the phone face down next to the brass key and watched the water, and for the first time in my life, the silence coming off my family didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a door. I closed it gently. That was a year ago. Here's the accounting, because you've earned it. The Colonial sold in 4 months. Chloe, Grant, and Lily live in a rented 2-bedroom on the unfashionable side of Columbus, and Grant works the parts counter at a marina. Boats, at last, professionally. His first real paycheck came at age 41. Chloe works the front desk at a dental office. I know this because one afternoon last spring, my phone lit up with a photograph. No caption, no message. Her first paycheck stub. I looked at it for a long time, at everything it did and didn't say. And I wrote back. Frame it. She didn't reply. But she didn't delete me either, and in my family, that's not nothing. That's a brick. You don't rebuild with a brick, but you can't rebuild without one. My parents sold the big house and moved to a condo near the club they can no longer afford to enter, and the annuity lands on the 1st of every month. Exactly enough. Exactly as designed. My mother sent me a birthday card in March. Under the printed poem, she'd written one line in her own hand. You always did land on your feet. Love, Mom. For her, that's practically a confession. I keep it in a drawer, not on the shelf. Progress. Filed accordingly. The force I grew up under didn't vanish, in case you're wondering. Money still talks in that family, and at a cousin's wedding last fall, the seating chart still told the old story, and I was still at table 9. The difference is that I ate the cake, danced once with a retired chaplain, left early, and slept 9 hours in a room with my name on the folio. The chart isn't mine to fix. It never was. Lily's trust sits at the bank, growing quietly, waiting for a girl who will never have to smile for her tuition. That one document in this whole saga with no strings on it anywhere, and it has my fingerprints on the design and my name nowhere in it, which is exactly right. The Ruth Mercer Scholarship funded its first 3 students in January. My grandfather reads me their thank you letters over the phone and pretends his allergies are acting up. And every Sunday at 4 o'clock, Walter Mercer calls me and we talk about nothing. Pelicans, gin rummy, whether Dale dyes his hair. And it is the richest conversation in my week, because it's the one thing left in this family that nobody, anywhere, is paying for. Last month I flew down and spent a weekend at the Gull Cottage. Just me. The owner has my crossword habit figured out now. She saves me the Saturday puzzle. Room 7 was free. It always seems to be free for me, which I choose not to investigate. I put the brass key on the nightstand next to Ruth's cornflower cup. I travel with it now. Go ahead and laugh. And I sat on that little balcony and watched the tide come in over the sandbars, and I thought about what I'd tell you if you were sitting in the other plastic chair. It's this. Real family, it turns out, is whoever's still at the table when nobody is picking up the check. And nobody. Not a sister, not a seating chart, not a front desk in Florida. Can lock you out of a life you paid for yourself. That's my story. One missing reservation, one quiet sentence at a birthday dinner, and a brass key I'll keep forever. If someone keeps telling you you're not the real family, maybe the realest thing you can do is pay for your own room and sleep well in it. If this story found you at the right time, share it with someone who needs it, drop a comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.